Álvaro Pereira Jr. was born in São Paulo and started working at Globo in 1995. He led the creation of the G1 news site in 2006 and is an exclusive reporter for Fantástico, the show of life.
As a reporter, he has covered major events like the TAM airplane crash, the fire at Boate Kiss, Michael Jackson's death, and he has interviewed Hollywood stars like Julia Roberts, Bruce Willis, and Brad Pitt.
Today he's our guest, and we'll be talking about his experience with the English language, his trips, and his work.
Check it out!
1, 2, 3 o'clock, blah, blah, spot.
Hello and welcome to the Blah Blah Spot, esse programa incrível, que a gente acha incrível, então a gente fala que é incrível mesmo, porque somos humildes, só que não, que a gente traz não toda semana, a cada 15 dias, um convidado muito especial para falar sobre o inglês ou para falar em inglês com a gente. E hoje a gente vai fazer basicamente as duas coisas. Nós vamos falar em inglês e vamos falar sobre inglês com um convidado de peso, né, Fábio?
Muito especial, que é o jornalista Álvaro Pereira Jr. Bem-vindo ao The Blah Blah Spot, Álvaro!
Obrigado pelo convite, viu, pessoal? Eu, de fato, o trabalho do Fábio eu conheço menos, mas eu sou super fã da Carina mesmo. Eu acompanho o canal dela das antigas, eu sou fascinado por ensino de idiomas, e eu sigo o teu canal desde muito antes, assim, e muito antes de você ter ficado gigante, né? E eu acho muito legal, porque eu acho que você nunca perdeu o foco, né? Eu acompanhava outros canais que eu achava que acabavam virando um canal sobre a pessoa. À medida, era um canal de ensino de inglês ou de ensino de alguma outra língua, aí o canal vai ficando famoso, a pessoa vai começando a se achar, e começa a virar um canal sobre ela, perde o foco. Você não, o teu canal é um canal de ensino de inglês, eu acho muito bacana. E o fato de você ser brasileira, né, que ajuda, você sabe quais os problemas e o Fábio também, quer dizer, como funciona a cabeça do aluno brasileiro e como resolver os problemas dos brasileiros. Sou muito feliz de estar aqui, sou seu fã.
Olha, quando eu soube disso, eu fiquei tipo assim, ai gente, tem nem roupa para esse momento. Eu fiquei muito mesmo. Feliz. E também me fez refletir sobre o impacto que um canal, né, sei lá, um trabalho que eu faço aqui dentro da minha casa, ele atinge pessoas de todos os níveis de inglês, todas as classes sociais. Então eu acho isso realmente muito democrático. O poder do ensino online gratuito pelo YouTube é uma coisa que às vezes me comove, assim, sabe? Porque o mesmo conteúdo que Álvaro Pereira Jr. pode assistir, a pessoa que realmente não tem condições de ter um curso, nunca sonhou em viajar porque é fora da realidade, tá assistindo também, sabe? Então eu acho isso realmente muito democrático, muito legal. O Fábio, ele domina muito o Twitter. O Fábio, assim, ó, eu chamo ele sempre de rei do Twitter, porque cada um na sua. O Fábio, ele tem muito talento para se comunicar lá naquele número de caracteres que eu não tenho, não.
Lá a gente já faz um trabalhinho um pouquinho mais. Exatamente isso. Eu acho que isso é uma coisa que eu sempre achei legal, que é a coisa do poder da síntese. Tu, em poucas palavras, dá o teu recado. Isso aí tem tudo a ver com jornalismo também, né?
E tem a ver também com os mal-entendidos que muitas vezes acontecem, né? De você querer dizer uma coisa, dizer outra, e quando você vai ver, o mundo já está caindo na sua cabeça. Estava lendo hoje de manhã sobre redes sociais. Eu sou bastante reticente em relação a redes sociais. Eu só tenho Twitter e tem sido muito útil, assim, como ferramenta profissional. Agora mesmo, né, eu estou mais de um ano só cobrindo pandemia, praticamente, e, eu conheci muitos especialistas super importantes, acompanho o noticiário estrangeiro sobre o que está acontecendo na pandemia pelo Twitter. É muito legal isso. Agora, eu nunca tive Facebook, nunca tive Orkut, nunca tive Instagram, sou bastante reticente em relação à rede social. Pessimista sempre, né?
A gente tem visto uma tendência de as pessoas só lerem as manchetes, né? Então ela vê uma manchete no Twitter e conclui algo a partir daquilo já, né? Então isso é muito perigoso, né?
E conclui algo da maneira mais, muitas vezes, agressiva, intempestiva, né? E nem clicou. Eu vejo, às vezes, no Twitter, a pessoa não leu o tweet até o final.
Não.
Um tweet tem 280 caracteres. Parar no meio, né? Aí tá te xingando lá por causa de uma coisa que você nem falou. Depois, se tivesse lido até o fim...
Muito louco.
Pessoal, deixa eu só pedir uma coisa, pedir desculpas pela minha aparência fantasmagórica.
Não tem problema.
É que a minha câmera não ajusta, não compensa a luminosidade. Eu estou no escuro, acreditem ou não, eu estou no escuro e parece que eu estou num...
Não é uma mesa branca, não estamos baixando o Álvaro Pereira Jr. aqui para que ele fale para nós como médiums, não.
O Ouija board, né?
Isso mesmo, o Ouija board, exactly. A gente é professor de inglês mesmo, e ele é um ser humano que ainda está entre nós, graças a Deus.
Não então, é um ectoplasma.
Não é um ectoplasma, não. Isso aí nem é também, Álvaro, eu sei, isso aqui também não é nada a ver, não é nenhum fenômeno paranormal como o do nosso amigo Thomas Gray Morton, que eu acompanhei.
Eu fiz matéria com ele.
Eu acompanhei.
We know about that. And I think we can talk about it in English.
You want to speak English? Let's speak English?
Yeah, 3, 2, 1 English time, because come on, you're used to speaking English. You've traveled to so many countries and you've interviewed so many people in English. Actually, you lived in the USA, right?
A couple of times, yeah. I was in a science writing fellowship when I was young at MIT in Boston, and then I spent like 2 and something years in California, over in the Bay Area near San Francisco. It's hard to say, actually. I think I'm pretty much self-taught. Actually, I took English classes when I was a kid, but it was one of those, small neighborhood English schools, things like that. I had one very, very good teacher, though, that taught me a lot. I'd say that I was already kind of good before I went, but it gets much better when you're actually, there, surrounded by people who speak English all the time, and it gets tired. You get a little bit tired sometimes, but that's how it makes a huge difference. And when I was a kid, actually, you had to go to school to learn a foreign language, and now you can do it from your house. And actually, you can listen to radio stations. I'm a radio addict. I've always been a radio addict. You can listen to radio all the time in whatever language you choose. So that makes a huge difference. But going back to your question, I think I was already kind of good and got better when I actually moved to the US.
But you started studying chemistry, right?
I have a chemistry degree. Yeah.
Well, you graduated in chemistry then.
I did.
Oh, that's great.
At the time, it wasn't actually allowed, but it was tolerated that you would do two different. I went to chemistry and school journalism at the same time at the same university. So chemistry was one of those full-time courses from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I did journalism in the evening because, I didn't have to go to work, which is a major deal, thanks to my dad. But right now, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be allowed to do it. You cannot do two different, how can I say that, to colleges? No.
Two degrees, yeah.
2 different degrees. You cannot do 2 different degrees in public schools or universities at the same time. You cannot do that. It's not allowed anymore. But at the time, even though it was kind of, the university I went to, USP, wasn't... They turned a blind eye to people who did that. If you actually did seriously both degrees, which I did, so I graduated in both.
But that's so hard, studying two very different things at the same time. I was just wondering, oh my goodness. So did you have time to be a teenager? No, you weren't a teenager. How old were you then? 20 something?
Yeah, from 19 to 22, 23.
He was a teenager.
Yeah. Did you have time to be a 20-nager?
Yeah, actually, journalism was pretty easy. Chemistry was really, really hard. You would, study your fanny off and still get a 2 out of 10, in a test. Mm-hmm. That happens a lot in chemistry. But journalism was pretty good. I mean, I think if I took, let's say, mechanical engineering and chemistry, I wouldn't be able to do that. But
right.
And I may do with chemistry and journalism.
Now, many journalists are going to be angry, are going to be mad at you because you're saying their course is easy.
They know better than anyone else that's easy. It really is.
God, thank God this is not Twitter. Don't worry. They will have to watch it all.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right. But then people might think that, okay, so 2 different courses, nothing to do with each other, but you actually found a way to connect these 2 experiences in your career as a journalist, right? You talk a lot about science, or you talked about science in the past. How was this thing, like writing about science?
I think it helps a lot. I mean, I had a friend when I was in my first year, when I was a freshman in chemistry school and university here in Sao Paulo, I was kind of not very sure that I liked chemistry. But I had a friend who told me, hey, hang on, do not drop out, because you will learn how to think. And that really turned out to be true. And so that helps me a lot with journalism. Most of what I do is covering science, and it helps you when you know how a scientist thinks. So you know the reasoning behind an experiment, for example. But I do not cover science 100% of the time, but I would say that's most of what I do. And the fact that I have a science background helps me a lot in dealing with people, and at least knowing a little bit of the lingo, knowing the difference between a molecule and an atom. That's a huge deal.
Or between a virus
and a bacteria.
And the bacteria.
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's very nice because I think we miss here this kind of knowledge from journalism, and not only from journalism, but anywhere. I think we have a very poor scientific approach back in school, right? I mean, we needed to know more about science. And you, as you were saying, you found a way to go through it. And every now and then you would have some report that you would bring science together, like in the early 2000s with the Paranormal Challenge by James Randi and Thomas Gray Martin. That was a success. I've always wanted to ask you that. How did you start being aware of that? Why did you cover that?
I have no idea. I barely remember that I had done stories about him until you guys reminded me of that.
Oh,
I don't know. I think he was somewhere in Florida, staying in some lady's house. But I don't remember why I ended up at that crackpot's presence.
Crackpot's funny.
He's the man of Ha, right?
That's this dude.
Thomas Ha. He was the guru of the 80s and 70s and early 90s of the artists. Baby Consuelo and people like that. They were really into that.
And he would do the cheapest tricks, He was
and people would believe him. That's the funny part.
Yeah, there was this thing I remember. His father used to own a pharmacy, so he handled essences, like very strong smelled essences, and that's the way they are. If you touch a very highly concentrated essence, the smell will linger forever on your skin, for example. And that's one of the things that he used to do. He would, spray essences on people, but he would say it was something else, like some sort of holy water or whatever. And people would go, "Oh my God, the smell never goes away. It's been a week and I can still smell it." Well, of course, it was a very highly concentrated essence that would, So that's the kind of thing he used to do, and he used to take advantage of people's.
Goulart de Andrade did a very good work. He did. He showed him resurrecting a little bird, and he was good. He had this sleight of hand kind of thing. And then Kronos, that magician from to help it together. They joined you. And do you remember Sociedade da Terra Redonda? That was a skeptical website. I was part of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when we got in touch, I received an email from James Randi.
From Randy,
From Randy saying, "Fabio, please, would you take a look at this? I think this Thomas Gray Martin is a juvenile."
Randy was quite a character. Yeah.
Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think so. He passed away.
Yeah.
Now you can imagine how anxious Fabio was to ask you this question.
I was. Thank you, Álvaro.
Really? That was for me. It was totally lost in the mist of time.
And then you've interviewed a lot of famous people, and I was reading about your career before talking to you now, and you've mentioned that when you do something very deep on science or on a very serious topic, nobody cares. But then when you interview Gisele Bündchen, then everybody talks about it, and there is your name again.
Yeah, that's kind of strange. And it's kind of strange because even though you're in the presence of those people, those interviews take a few minutes, like especially movie people. It's like 5-6 minutes, and that's it. You're thrown out. And but when it actually airs, there you are in the same room as some big Hollywood star, but in reality, he barely knows who you are, and you've been kicked out in 6 minutes.
I know. I have a picture with Tom Hanks.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Really?
And it was like 2 minutes.
Does he know?
I'm
Does he
not
know
sure. Well, he has no idea who I am, but I was at the YouTube space in New York and they said, well, we have a surprise. You're going to take a group picture in that room. And then we headed to the room and it was funny because there were so many people there. And I thought there was something weird because there were too many people there. And then, okay, when I entered the room, I saw that guy and I was like, oh, this guy looks like Tom Hanks. Oh my God, it's Tom Hanks. And then we took a picture with him and then that's it. So I have a picture with Tom Hanks. But you've actually had the opportunity to interview many famous people. And I know that people are very curious to know how these interviews go. So you've interviewed, for example, Bruce Willis and what other people? Julie Roberts as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be based in California. So if you're in California, if you're a journalist and you're in California for a year, you will end up interviewing pretty much everyone. So and that's how these things work. I mean, it's not that I knock on some dude's door and he opens the door and there he is, Tom Hanks. I mean, they do those things because they want to promote their latest work, be it a movie or a book or a record or album or whatever. So that's how it works. They release a movie, they want to promote it, they speak to the press from all over the world. And there you are for 5 minutes talking to. And it's getting worse. It used to be 5 minutes with each star. Now the way they've been doing it, you get two at the same time, 5 minutes with two of them in the same room. Yeah, they've been doing this a lot. Wow. I mean, before the pandemic, of course.
Isn't that hard to choose the questions to ask them?
How do you choose the questions?
Yeah,
you try to come up with something original, but doesn't work very well normally because, especially if you're in the end of the line. Let's say they're going to speak with 20 different journalists.
Wow.
And you are number 18th. When you actually get there, they're already bored.
Yeah.
They can't stand the same questions over and over. But that's something important to be said. They're very professional. I had one exception in all those interviews that I've done. Julia Roberts, that was a long time ago. She was really unpleasant.
Really?
With me. I mean, she's been, I have friends who spoke to her and I have no complaints whatsoever, but with me, it didn't go that well.
Maybe she was tired as well. Well, we don't know.
You never know.
I'm disappointed. I will stop talking to her. So, Álvaro, let me ask you something. How was it in Neverland? Because you covered Michael Jackson's death, right?
I did. I mean, I went to California the day after he died, I think, to do a couple of stories. And they called me from Brazil and said, hey, could you stay there? Let's try and do something else. So my 2 stories had already aired on Fantástico. And then I got a call on Monday saying, Álvaro, instead of coming back, why don't you just stay there and let's see what we can come up with? And so one of the things that we thought of was going to Neverland. And I actually, it was a funny thing, we rented a helicopter because we had no idea we would be allowed to actually get in. So we flew over Neverland. And so we kind of already had a story of sorts. And then I got a call from our office in New York saying, Álvaro, believe it or not, they will allow a number of foreign media inside Neverland. So let's go there. And I remember, God, I had totally forgotten about that. It was a sort of I think it was a holiday. I don't know what holiday that was, 4th of July, maybe. But Neverland is not exactly close to LA. It's up north near San Bernardino, I think. It was a huge traffic jam. But I'm talking about traffic jam, California style.
And how long before that had he died?
Like a week before that, wow. I think. And so we were there, and we, let's say it should take us an hour. It took us 3. So we got there late, but everybody was late. Except, of course, for the German crew. The German crew was already there.
How did they get there?
I have no idea. But I remember us, the Dutch, and it was mostly European outlets. Everybody was late, so it turned out well.
And how did you feel entering that magical place, or the place where, not magical, did it feel magical or did it feel weird?
I'd say more weird. I mean, when you do these things, at least, the way I do them, I approach these things in a very professional way. So the thing, you were worried about getting the story done. So you have no time at least in my case, I have no time for emotions or things like that. And actually, that's something else that our guys in New York had come up with. I was not there alone. I was there, of course, with the cameraman, but there was this lady who used to hang out with Jackson at Neverland. And she was with us because she had a Brazilian friend. So we got in touch with her. So she sort of walked us around. She would say, hey, there's something, let's go there. There's a TV set behind that stone, that rock, that piece of rock. And there was a TV set. Oh, he used to come there with the kids and let's go to his room because you'll see this and that. So she was sort of guiding us along. But I was worried about getting the story done. And I remember the microphone wasn't working, that kind of thing.
Just like our Zoom meeting here, we are facing some problems here. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I said, these things happen all the time. Okay, so if Álvaro said it happens all the time, then we're fine.
Maybe that's me. I'm the jinxed one.
No, of course not. I just have a question that is related to this. So how much time do you have to prepare
a story like that,
yeah, how much time? Because when somebody dies, so we have to get it done. Somebody dies, so we have to cover the death. And then if the person is very famous, we have to keep on talking about this person because this is what the audience wants to watch, wants to see or read. So how much time do you have for an important story like this, to create an important story like this?
It depends. I mean, if you work for a daily newscast, let's say for Jornal Nacional, you don't have much time at all because you have to make those, you have hours, literally hours. When you work for a weekly show like myself, like I do, like Fantástico, it also depends. Sometimes you do stories that we call special features that are not necessarily linked to that week's news. So that will give you more time. Let's say you may have a month or something to work on something. But if you're doing a breaking news story, or if Michael Jackson dies on a Saturday morning, on a month, I wasn't there yet. I'm sure you remember when Ayrton Senna died. Was it on a Sunday morning? On a Sunday morning. Can you imagine what putting Fantástico together was like? On that
Sunday morning, and then at 8 you have to have everything done.
And there's also Boate Kiss. You guys are from Rio Grande do Sul.
No, that was
was a Saturday night.
Saturday night, and then Sunday night you have to get everything done. Yeah, so you've covered Boate Kiss as well, right?
I did. The week after.
Of course, you always try to be the very, very professional, but that was so sad. How did you feel about interviewing those people? Can you really separate these things, or sometimes you feel like something?
Yeah, what you try to do, you try to approach people with as much respect as you can muster, because they're going through a very tough situation. It's not something that I enjoy doing, actually, but you have to respect people if they say they don't want to speak to you. But sometimes they do. Sometimes it's a way of, venting their emotions, and they want to talk about it because for some reason that will remind them of their lost one, the person that they just lost. So, and also on TV, you deal, I remember specifically in that case of Boate Kiss, there was a producer with us, which was much better than I am at handling these situations. So she would go earlier in advance and speak to someone and arrange things, set the stage. That's the right way to put it. So we could come and actually shoot the interview. That's a very good question. I don't think I've ever felt like crying, but you do feel moved. I mean, when you're interviewing people under.
And you have to turn the working mode on, right? It's just, okay.
That's how I do it. I mean, I wouldn't say that's the only way to do it. I know people who are very good journalists, and they do get involved in their stories, emotionally involved. I try to step back a little bit without being cold. I think that's the right balance that you have to aim for. As if you're a surgeon, right? If you're doing a surgery and if you start thinking about that person's personal life, you're going to go crazy. At the same time, you cannot treat that person you're operating on as a piece of meat. So you got to find a balance. I'm dealing with a human being here. I cannot be cold. At the same time, I cannot get totally involved. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy as well. So that's the balance we try to find.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line you have to thread on.
When I see your reports on TV, I remember Hélio Costa sometimes, because, when I was a kid, I used to watch Fantástico, and I would go to bed shaking because there was always something to scare me. And this was one of the cool things about Fantástico back in the early 80s. And I feel, obviously, I'm not only talking about that, but bring it. I remember there was a joke that people used to say that I think it was TV Pirata. Once somebody was making an impression of Hélio Costa, and then so Hélio Costa, do you have any new disease today? Or no, there is no new disease today. No, but, and then he would talk about some other tragedy or something. This is obviously it's a humorous way to approach it, but I like this kind of things that bring us the mystery, right? If I'm being clear.
No, I know what you mean. But Carina, do you know who Hélio Costa is? You're
no,
younger than we are.
Yeah,
no.
She's novinha. She's not.
I'm not that young, but I don't know who he is.
He used to be Globo's correspondent in New York, and he would mostly do Fantástico. I'm not sure he was in the daily in Jornalista as well, but he would.
No, I remember only Fantástico with a very deep voice.
Yeah, he became a politician later.
He became.
Yeah, and what happened was what happens is, at the time, it was a very different time. I mean, I was a kid myself. I was a child myself. And we had almost no contact with foreign media. So what Hélio would do, he would use pieces that aired on, let's say, 60 Minutes, which is a major, very much like Fantástico in the US. And he would repackage those stories with him in them. So most of those things were actually 60 minutes pieces. And they had to do with, the way these things are, new diseases, epidemics, things like that. But you know what? It's a funny thing. Not too long ago, I was watching the very first story done on Brazilian TV by Hélio Costa about AIDS.
Yeah,
and
he was the guy who first talked about it, right?
Yeah, and he got it right.
Yeah.
Because I watched the story, with that mind frame, he probably screwed up here and there, and not at all. No, that was scientifically correct story. Probably because it was translated from 60 Minutes. That's my guess. But there was nothing, and he was interviewed the right people, Robert Gallo, people like that, who afterwards became famous. So he got it right. But there was different times. They used to have these soundtrack was pretty heavy. And the voice was also, deep and scary.
It would start shaking before any report.
Yeah. And we had no idea those things even existed because, he was our entryway into a whole new world of American media.
He was our Google. He was our internet.
Yeah. And these days, when someone airs on Fantástico, people will at least have heard of it. But but at the time, he was bringing new things all the time, new things for us in Brazil.
And then Fabio would sleep shaking. And you know what? What
shaking.
Makes me shake about Fantástico is the song, because it reminds me of Monday. Lots of people say that. And it's true. I feel the same. I can't hear that song. It's like, oh my God, my Sunday is over.
Oh, tomorrow's Monday.
But what can you do? It's a Sunday evening show. We cannot change that.
Para usar a linguagem atual, dá gatilho. Me dá gatilho. It triggers me. Like, oh my God, my Sunday's over.
It massively does. Massively
it does. It's good for us, though. It means we'll have Monday off.
Oh, it's good for you. Yeah.
How about that?
So our Monday is your Sunday.
Pretty much, yeah.
How about
That's
that?
how it works.
Yeah, how about
and
that?
then talking about the internet, you were one of the creators or the creator of G1, o portal G1. You were the creator, right?
The first director of content, yeah.
That's amazing because, now it's the biggest portal in Brazil, or it's the biggest portal.
I think
right?
it is in terms of viewership, yeah.
Yeah, and what has changed in the way you guys think about the headlines and what you post there, because this world is so hard. I can't even talk to some people because they will say I am this or that. They will judge me by the opinions I have. So I can imagine how hard it is to choose the right headline and trying to be neutral. No one is neutral, but trying to be as neutral as possible in this world we live in, where people are ready to throw you a stone. So how do you feel about it now?
Again, it's another fine line, hard one to find the right balance in. I think what happens, I'm not at G1 anymore, even though the people who run the website these days are those who used to work under me, so I'm friends with them. So the way it's hard to do, because at the same time, if someone Googles something, you want to be found, right? Same with your channel on YouTube. If someone is looking for an English classes, you want your channel to show up, to be one of the very first ones to show up. So it's the same with if you work for a news website. You have to come up with headlines that it's called search engine optimization. You know about that, of course.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, so you have to use the right words, so you will be picked up by someone who's searching on that, who's doing a search on that subject. At the same time, as you said, you have to try to be neutral, and you have to try not to use words that go beyond the normal journalism landscape. So it's a very, very fine line to thread. I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore, because it's
But do you think it's harder nowadays than it was before, or it has always been hard?
I think the journalism in the post-Trump era is much harder. Because, in a post-social media era, because you have to dwell on the same realm as fake news. And, and you get something on WhatsApp. And I get it from friends of mine who I regard to be very intelligent people, who will tell me something that they received a link on WhatsApp for.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell? Where's this thing from? Who reported on it? Who wrote this? So, and at the same time, you're trying to do, professional journalism, which means, speaking to sources, coming up with decent text, with decent copy.
With responsibility.
There's a lot of responsibility involved. And at the same time, you're competing with, anonymous links on social media that people tend to believe in, because the people who come up with these fake news, they know how to do it. They know how to make it look credible. They know how to pretend that's real. So it's quite a struggle.
Yeah, it actually similar to the English teaching world, because I want people to click on my links. I want people to hear what I have to say. But at the same time, there are other people, not only in Brazil, I'm not talking about Brazil, but people saying that learning English is fast, you can be fluent in 3 months. And then they give what the audience wants, which is dangerous, because people tend to believe what they want to believe, right? So they want to believe that it's easy, or they want to believe it's fast. So I try to come up with titles for my videos that will catch these people's attention as well. But then there's a thin line again, because, okay, it needs to be clickable, but at the same time, I don't want it to hurt my beliefs as a teacher. So I overthink about my titles all the time.
I can tell you're doing it really well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're doing it right. You're doing it right.
Thank you so much.
Álvaro, I recently watched your documentary about North Korea on Global Play. Well, first of all, congratulations. What a great documentary. Okay. We have everything we need to know there, which is already difficult, considering that it's, I think, the most difficult country in the world to get in. So tell us a little bit of this experience, how it was for you.
That's one of those things that a reporter has to do. Sometimes you have to knock on people's doors, and that's exactly what I did. I was always fascinated by North Korea. I had watched everything. I've read, tons of books on North Korea, and I always wanted to go there. And one day I was in Brasilia doing some sort of interview. I said, I'm gonna go and drop by North Korean embassy. because Brazil is one of the very few countries who actually has diplomatic ties with North Korea. Brazil has an embassy there, actually, which is not staffed right now, but there used to be an ambassador based in North Korea. So there is an embassy in North Korea, in Brazil, of North Korea in Brasilia.
There is a door.
So I went there and knocked on the door and introduced myself to them, and they gave me a little card and said, yeah, we can try and arrange that. So what I did, I was pestering them for pretty much 6 months, calling all the time, sending email. And then the way they do it, they will let journalists in at certain dates of the year. For example, the anniversary of the foundation of the country, or the anniversary of the party. They have a few of those. And that's when they let foreign journalists in. So that was it. That was the 70th anniversary of the foundation of the country. And there was actually a bunch of journalists that they were allowed to come in. But it was a nightmare. I mean, getting the air ticket is a nightmare. Getting the visa is a nightmare. But you know what? It took me 6 months. I spoke to a guy from the Daily Mirror in the UK who was actually trying to get the visa for 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was there with us.
Yeah, you got it 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it in 6 months. And I think being in Brazil, it's easier for you to go there and simply knock on the door. If it was in London, or if I was in, let's say, in Beijing, and I wouldn't be able to actually go to the North Korean embassy and knock on their door.
Brazilians are more like, okay, he's Brazilian.
Yeah.
Let's talk to this fella.
Yeah, and it's a little house, not a little house, but it's a house. It's not even in the neighborhood where all the embassies are. It's someplace else. So that's how it went.
Fantastic.
And they drove me crazy until the day before you actually make the trip. You don't know if it's really going to happen.
Yeah, you don't know where you go. I mean, certain parts of the documentary, you were down there, waiting for the 3 guys that the government assigned to be following you up, like during the whole, it was 11 days there, right? 11
days, yeah. You have the 3 minders with us all the time. They sleep in the same hotel.
Oh God.
No.
Yeah. And you never know what's going to happen the next morning, so that you get a call at 4 a.m. telling you have to be down there at the bus at 6 o'clock in 2 hours.
Yeah,
we do that all the time.
Yeah, and what are you going to do today? Well, today we're going to be executed. Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I don't have time for that.
I don't have time for that.
It was pretty rough, especially because there were so many changes that we ended up getting there before everyone else did. And we left after everyone else did. So in the middle of the trip, everybody was there. CNN, CBS, Channel 4. If anything goes wrong, those guys are
We're
there.
together.
But after they left, it was pretty much just us and a girl from Vietnamese TV. And then we ran into some trouble. When you actually get to China on the way back, oof, I'm here, freedom. You're in China and you're feeling so free because compared to North Korea, Jesus Christ.
And you could take pictures that if they saw the pictures and the videos, you would have problems. I remember that. You saw that?
Yeah, because it's a long story, but they wanted to take us somewhere. They took a shortcut and we ended up driving right into literally a mass of people who were building a road with their own bare hands. And those people were, extremely thin. They were toothless and they had never seen a foreigner in their lives. So they were surrounding our car and we were taking pictures. I mean, and it was clear that they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want us to see that kind of situation. And when we came back to the hotel, they said, hey, you have to delete that footage. You have to get rid of that. You might run into trouble. It was the day before we were supposed to come back. So it was a long negotiation and they thought we had deleted all of it, but we deleted some of it. But at the very last minute, you're afraid that at the airport, they will want to check your camera and find out what you actually have. And you're in North Korea, right?
Wow, yeah. Well, if you guys want to check this amazing documentary, it's on Globoplay.
Globoplay, 11 days in North Korea, 11 dias na Coreia do Norte. And if I may, can I talk briefly about the documentary that we did?
Of course. Go ahead.
Check it out. Corrida das Vacinas. It's a 6-episode investigative docuseries about the race for a vaccine I've been to Russia, to India. We were not allowed in China, but we hired a local crew who got lots of great stuff. And we follow the stories of people in Brazil who need the vaccines. It's a really, really cool series. I'm really proud of it. I was a reporter and I directed it as well. Wow. Corrida das Vacinas on Globoplay, open for non-subscribers. You don't have to be a subscriber. Check it out. It's really worth
and maybe, Álvaro, it's the first time in a long time that people are really interested in science again because they want to understand what's happening.
Yeah. How crazy is
Beautiful.
that? And we have a lot of explanations on how vaccines work, how viruses work, what viruses are. Very easy to understand with beautiful graphics. To check it out, please. Corrida das Vacinas.
Go ahead and watch it, guys. Então, voltando para o português agora, para encerrar, eu acho interessante a gente mencionar que tudo isso que o Álvaro já fez, viajar para a Coreia do Norte, para a Índia, entrevistar ator, atriz, enfim, tudo isso só foi possível porque você tem o domínio da língua inglesa, né? Então, a gente sabe que muita gente no Brasil tem esse sonho, não chegou lá ainda, tá aqui de repente porque tá querendo praticar o listening ou porque tá interessado em aprender inglês. O que tu diria para as pessoas, assim, se uma dica ou uma mensagem para as pessoas que estão nessa luta aí para aprender o idioma?
Pô, muito legal você ter perguntado isso, Carina. Eu nunca tinha me dado conta, mas é verdade, né? Faz uma diferença lascada você falar inglês, né? Na hora de escolher alguém, manda esse aí que fala inglês, nem é muito bom. Mas assim, eu acho que o trabalho que você faz, Carina, que o Fábio faz e outros professores bacanas, eu gosto muito da Jack também.
Também, Jack é minha amiga, adoro.
Que assim como vocês, é professora mesmo, né? Não é alguém que fala inglês e está dando aula de inglês, foi treinada para ser professora, né? Eu acho que isso faz uma diferença enorme. Então, eu acho que, gente, assim, nunca foi tão fácil aprender inglês, né? Nunca teve tantas fontes legais, caras bons pra caramba, como a Carina, como o Fábio. Você pode pegar um aplicativo e ficar escutando rádio em inglês o dia inteiro, vai entrando, nem que seja por osmose. Vou dar um exemplo. Eu, quando eu tinha 20 e poucos anos, eu estudei russo. Eu fiz 2 anos e meio de russo. E eu consigo ler, mas eu não sei falar, é muito difícil, assim. E por que foi tão difícil? Porque eu não podia ligar o meu celular e escutar uma rádio em russo. Eu não podia achar 500 mil vídeos em russo no YouTube, 500 mil professores legais, como a Carina e como o Fábio, de russo, que hoje tem também, né? O único contato que eu tinha com a língua russa era com o meu professor, que era brasileiro, sei lá se ele falava bem russo também, né? Então, mas me ajudou muito, sabe? Quando eu vou, eu já fiz matéria na Ucrânia, na Rússia, eu consigo ler. Então, pelo menos eu sei se a palavra é parecida tem uma origem latina, eu já sei que ali aquilo está escrito restaurante, sabe? Assim, coisas assim.
Como ajuda, né?
Ajuda pra caramba. Então, gente, inglês, obviamente, é uma língua diferente da nossa, não é uma língua latina, mas dá para aprender e é essencial aprender. Vai te abrir milhões de oportunidades na vida. E como eu falei, comparado com a minha geração não tinha pessoas como o Fábio, como a Carina e outros professores legais que estão no YouTube, e a minha geração não tinha acesso à língua inglesa. A gente, às vezes você pegava um filme em VHS e botava ali uma tábua na frente da legenda para não ver a legenda.
Sim, uma fita, né? Olha só, né? As gambiarra que tinha que fazer.
As gambiarra. Hoje você apaga a legenda quando você quiser e de novo, eu sou fanático por rádio, por podcasts. Tá cheio de podcast legal em
inglês, conta aí
cheio de rádio legal.
2 podcasts muito legais aí em inglês pra galera seguir.
Eu não sou, assim, o cara mais fã de podcast, mas eu lembro de vou citar um que eu acho demais, que é de ciência. Chama Radiolab. Na verdade, é um programa da WNYC, da Rádio Pública de Nova York, que eu não escuto no tempo real, eu escuto em time shift, então é como se fosse um podcast, né? Ele não é um podcast nativo, é um programa de rádio que você ouve na hora que você quiser. Então, o Radiolab é muito legal. Ele é editado de um jeito meio dreamy, assim, sabe? É uma coisa meio viajante e é sobre ciência. É muito legal. O Radiolab é demais.
Vou acompanhar.
E vou falar um outro, para quem gosta de música, que é a minha outra praia, o Iggy Pop, famoso Iggy Pop. Ele tem um programa na BBC 6, né? Chama Iggy Pop Confidential, que eu também, às sextas-feiras, mas eu ouço como podcast. É demais. Primeiro, para aprender inglês, a dicção do Iggy é ótima.
Opa!
Sotaque bem Midwestern, assim.
Como é o nome? De novo, do podcast?
Chama Iggy Pop, Iggy Confidential.
Iggy Confidential.
Iggy Confidential. É na BBC 6. A BBC 6 é uma rádio dedicada à música e ela é uma BBC que é só online. Então, Iggy Confidential, para quem gosta de música, O Iggy Pop tem um bom gosto absurdo, ele toca as coisas mais loucas, mais improváveis e mais legais, e ouvir ele falando é um prazer. Então, Radiolab e Iggy Confidential, dadas as dicas.
E eu vou te dar uma dica, então, já que tu gosta de música, tu já deve conhecer, mas tu não conhece, Digging Deep with Robert Plant. Já ouviu?
Ah, é? Não.
Ele com o Robert Plant, do Led Zeppelin, ele fala sobre os bastidores das gravações dos discos do Led Zeppelin, um monte de coisa. Aí ele
legal.
Cara, tu nunca quer que termine. É muito bom. Fica a dica. Digging Deep!
Legal.
Nossa, e olha só, o papo é tão bom que a gente nem conseguiu chegar lá na música, né? Porque, como tu disse, é mais uma das tuas paixões. Tem uma entrevista contigo no YouTube que a gente achou aqui, esqueci o nome do canal. Você tava falando bastante sobre música, era uma sacada, assim, a gravação. Eu assisti.
Eu sei qual
é de 2017.
É do Júlio Bernardo, meu amigo, Boteco do JB. É o Júlio, meu chefe.
Isso mesmo.
A gente tinha bebido